ability to salvage the blood vessels that had been horribly damaged by the bullets.
Lennon's wounds were fatal. He was pronounced dead at 11:20 p.m. Lennon was 40 years old.
There were a lot of people that were crying in the emergency department that day. People didn't quite know what to do or how to respond. The staff spent a lot of time supporting themselves. Our treatment didn't end when we ceased resuscitating. We still had to tell Yoko Ono.
It was Dr. Lynn's job to tell Lennon's wife she was a widow.
I walked in the room and told her in the best way that I could that in spite of all of our efforts, John Lennon had died. Yoko Ono did not accept that for a long period of time, several minutes. She became quite upset and said, "You're lying to me, this can't possibly be true."
Music executive David Geffen was in the waiting room with Yoko Ono. He had been at the recording session with the Lennons just hours earlier. When he heard the news, he called Lennon's 17-year-old son Julian in England, Lennon's aunt, and former Beatle Paul McCartney. Yoko Ono told Dr. Lynn to wait to make a public announcement until she could go home to tell her 5-year-old son Sean that his father had died. Later that night, Dr. Lynn broke the news to the world that rock and roll legend John Lennon was dead. As grief-stricken fans began gathering in front of Roosevelt Hospital, suspect Mark David Chapman underwent questioning at the 20th Precinct. It was less than 2 hours after John Lennon was pronounced dead when Chapman dictated and signed a 3-page confession. The following are excerpts from it. I never wanted to hurt anybody. My friends will tell you that. I have 2 parts of me. The big part is very kind. I have a small part in me that cannot understand the world and what goes on in it. I did not want to kill anybody, and I really don't know why I did it. I have nothing against John Lennon or anything he has done in the way of music or personal beliefs. I'm sure the big part of me is Holden Caulfield. The small part of me must be the devil. Chapman ended his confession by saying how sorry he felt for the doorman at the Dakota.
He said to me, "Would you please go back to the Dakota when you see Jose, the doorman, to apologize to him?" I'm saying, wow, where's this guy coming from as far as that's concerned? Now all of a sudden he's sorry.
Before Chapman could make his one phone call, his wife Gloria, who had already heard the news, called the precinct. At first, Chapman refused to speak with her. He would take the call only after Officer Spiro told her what had happened.
So I said, "Hi, this is Steve Spiro. I'm the police officer that arrested your husband. And he's all right, and he's not hurt. And he's been arrested for killing John Lennon."
Spiro handed the phone to Chapman. He remained calm and lucid. He told Gloria to call the police to protect her from the press that would be hounding her. After his phone call, the police brought Chapman to Central Booking downtown, where they took his fingerprints, mugshots, and filled out an arrest form. Chapman's arraignment was scheduled for the following afternoon.
This arrest was definitely the most exciting arrest that I had ever made. The only thing that I wish was that John Lennon lived.
A sentiment shared by millions.
He's not dead. John Lennon can't be dead.
In Los Angeles, Lennon's best friend, Elliot Mintz, had rushed to catch the last flight to New York when he heard someone had been shot at the Dakota. He had a strong suspicion it was John Lennon. He wasn't prepared for what he heard next.
I was in the sky, and an hour aboard the plane, I saw 2 flight attendants rushing out from the cockpit in tears, and one of them said, "They killed John Lennon." So I had the next 4 hours to myself in the cocoon of the cabin to absorb that experience. He was my best friend.
By 1 a.m. on the night of the shooting, a crowd of nearly 1,000 had gathered outside the Dakota.
They were quiet, well reserved. And it was sad. It was a sad moment.
They lit candles. Some cried and sang Lennon and Beatles songs. The building's gate became a makeshift shrine covered in flowers, pictures, and letters.
Seeing grown men and women next to teenagers crying, seeing police officers with tears in their eyes, seeing people laying wreaths and flowers and photographs at the gate made complete sense. He had given them everything he had.
In parks and stadiums throughout the world, on broadcasts from New York to Washington to Liverpool, mourners paid tribute to John Lennon. In the Lennons' bedroom at the Dakota, Mintz sat with Yoko Ono, listening to the commotion below.
You could hear the sounds of the children on the street singing along with the radios that were just playing their music and his music and Beatle music. It resonated as if you were in a cathedral in a church.
Lennon's former bandmate, Ringo Starr, soon arrived at the Dakota.
He walked into the bedroom and he looked at her and he said, "I know exactly how you feel." And in Yoko's inimitable way, she looked back at him and said, "No, you don't."
Lennon was cremated privately and his ashes taken to an undisclosed location. Yoko Ono invited mourners to participate, from wherever they were in the world, in a 10-minute silent vigil for the rock star whose greatest pleasure in recent years had become his family.
His son was only 5 years old, and it was the joy of his life, and he had just begun to establish a relationship with his 16, 17-year-old son, Julian. He wanted to be there. He wanted to be at the Dakota.